welcome everyone. I am Congressmember Kevin Mullen, proud to represent the 15th Congressional District, the southeastern part of San Francisco, as well as much of San Mateo County. Today marks the 35th anniversary of the Loma Prieta earthquake. Like many in the Bay Area, I was getting ready to watch Game 3 of the World Series with the Giants and the A's. My orange tie will tell you who I was rooting for that day. I was a student at the University of San Francisco. I'm going to be at home with my mom, and ran down the hall when the earthquake started, our hall at home in South San Francisco. And I remember the walls shaking so violently. I was like banging into the walls as I was running down the hall. The pictures were coming off the wall. And we were all just basically in shock when that happened. I think everybody of a certain age remembers where they were on that fateful day. Remember that moment where we were. Many of us here today were glued.
And did you meet our chief, Bill Scott?
Okay, we are going to call this
It's almost
take
like
two.
a earthquake situation where
Test,
technology
test,
can
test.
go
How's
out
sound?
at
Can
any
you hear?
time.
Test. We're good? Everybody got sound?
All right. Check 1 2 1 2. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your patience. And Mullen, proud to represent California's 15th Congressional District, a little part of the southeastern section of San Francisco, as well as San Mateo County. And as you know, today marks the 35th anniversary of the Loma Prieta earthquake. Like many in the Bay Area, I was getting ready to watch Game 3 of the World Series. The orange tie will give it away who I was rooting for when the Giants faced the A's there in 1989. This was a rare event, to be sure, to have those two teams face each other. But you'll recall, for those of you of a certain age, ABC had just come on the air, and a massive 6.9 magnitude earthquake struck. I was at home with my mom when that house started shaking. I remember running down the hall and actually banging into the walls of the hall as I ran down. The pictures were coming off, books were falling off the shelves, and basically we were in shock, trying to process what had just happened. I think we all remember where we were, if you're of a certain age, where you were at that fateful moment. Many of us here were glued to radio and television when it came back on the air. Buildings had collapsed. A portion of the Bay Bridge had come down. 63 people tragically lost their lives. And today is a somber reminder of the destructive power of earthquakes. The risk is frightening. Here in the Bay Area, there is a 72% chance of a 6.7 or greater magnitude earthquake in the next 20 years. California is earthquake country, but we're not alone in facing risks. This is a national problem that deserves national attention. 75% of the United States could experience a major earthquake, and almost half of the U.S. population, 150 million people, reside in areas that are at risk of experiencing a damaging earthquake in the next 50 years. On average, earthquakes cost the nation billions of dollars annually in building damage and associated losses. Yet despite these known losses, we still don't have a firm understanding of how prepared communities are in this country. As part of my first term in Congress, I proposed the Earthquake Resilience Act. My bill would direct the National Earthquake Hazard Reduction Program, led by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST, to conduct the first national risk assessment to understand how prepared communities are for damaging earthquakes. To know where to direct federal resources, we need to examine how different states and cities are adopting and enforcing building codes and implementing other risk reduction efforts. My bill also directs the program to develop national guidelines for restoring lifeline infrastructure, power, water, communications, transportation after a disaster strikes. We are more reliant than ever before on these lifeline systems to live, to work, to communicate with each other. The bill would also direct the USGS, the Geological Survey, to incorporate advanced technology in their earthquake monitoring system. Investing in preparedness now will save lives and money in the future. That is why Congress should act to help ensure the nation is better prepared for the next disaster. Now I would like to turn it over to our wonderful San Francisco Mayor, London Breed. I do want to give a shout out. We are joined today as well, and I'm going to have to move these microphones just a little bit. We are joined by SF Police Chief Bill Scott, as well as Fire Chief Sandy Tong, joining Mayor Breed. Thank you, Mayor, for welcoming us to your great city, and thank you for your leadership. And with that, I'll turn it over to the Mayor.
Thank you. All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Klamath. We wanted to bring you somewhere where you could possibly feel a little bit of the aftershocks of what it means to be in the midst of an earthquake if you are maybe from someplace else where you're not used to experiencing an earthquake. And as our congressman noted, that it's not a matter of if there will be an earthquake, especially in the Bay Area, it's a matter of when. And one of the things that San Francisco has done is some remarkable improvements to our infrastructure as a result of our past experiences. We can go far back as 1906, when we had an earthquake, but the devastation was one thing from an earthquake. The fire that destroyed over 80% of San Francisco was quite another. And so rebuilding San Francisco took a lot of work, but it was done differently than before. It was done keeping in mind that we needed to make sure that there was fire support for water systems all over San Francisco so that we could address the growing needs of a major city. And more importantly, over the years, as earthquakes continue to happen, it was important for us to always think about new buildings and what we need to do to prepare for the future, and building up our emergency preparedness was an important part of that. Fast forward to the 1989 earthquake. And as Congressman Mullen mentioned, if you were alive at the time, you can remember 35 years ago where you were. I was in high school, and I was actually in the neighborhood at one of my friend's house. It felt like the house turned over almost upside down. It was absolutely nothing like I'd ever experienced or thought that I would experience, especially because so many things were falling all over the place. I mean, it was a real earthquake, 6.9 magnitude. And when the earthquake stopped, the aftershocks continued. And that night, I remember the electricity was off. We had to get batteries for radio so that we could hear about what was going on. technology was not as advanced as it is now, but we had to revert back to using what we could, flashlights with batteries and radios and other things to help address this. But the devastation was significant. There were 63 people, as was mentioned, who lost their lives. 3,700 people were injured. 12,000 people were displaced. And some of us, like myself, I attended Galileo High School and noticed that so many of those soft story buildings that had garages underneath and not the infrastructure to hold those apartments up were all devastated. It was a tremendous impact on our city. And not only did we have to deal with the impacts, we had to begin the process of rebuilding and of making San Francisco a more resilient city, a stronger city. Since then, we've invested over, how much? $20 billion in infrastructure, in improving our earthquake safety and preparedness, in requiring many of those soft story buildings to reinforce so that they are prepared when the next earthquake hits, that we're building these new buildings that are really tall, ensuring that they are seismically safe, that we are investing in our water systems and all the things that we might need when a disaster hits. San Francisco is a major city, and anything can happen at any time. And so we as a city have to always be prepared for any situation. And I am proud to be here today with our Fire Chief Sandy Tung and our Police Chief Bill Scott, because they are leading two of our major public safety departments. It's not a matter of if they will be helpful, they will spring into action. When people will run from the danger, they will run towards it in order to help save lives. And this new bill that Congressman Mullen has introduced, the Earthquake Resiliency Act, will be transformative. It will help make sure that places like San Francisco and others that experience earthquakes, that we are thinking about that in everything that we do, that we are doing the analysis to understand what we need, how we need to prepare, that we are investing in what is necessary to maintain our infrastructure and to minimize, the damage, to minimize the injuries, to minimize the things that could potentially happen if we are not prepared. That's what this is about. It's about preparedness. It's about taking an opportunity to remind the public that it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. I remember growing up in school, we'd always do earthquake drills and under the desk, under a hard surface, and all the things you need to do. Today is a way for us to remember and commemorate that time, but it's also a time for us to remember that, 72 hours after an earthquake, we may not be able to get to you. So 72.org is a place you can go to know what you should have in an earthquake preparedness kit. Some of your items might be expired. Make sure that you check those kits today. Make sure that you're a part of the solution. We have the Neighborhood Emergency Response Team, NERT. You can learn and train so that you can be helpful to your neighbors. There's so much we could do today as a way to remind us that we need to be prepared. We're all in this together, and we make great things happen, and we save lives when we do come together. And bills like what the congressmen are proposing are just that, what we need to ensure that not only San Francisco, the entire Bay Area and the entire country will be prepared, not if something happens, but when it does. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for your leadership. And indeed, this 35th anniversary and commemoration is an opportune moment for us to be mindful of the challenges ahead and to be prepared for when the big one comes. Now, with that, I want to bring in an expert, Dr. George Guscha. He's the CEO of the National Institute of Building Sciences, a nonprofit that has endorsed this bill. George has a doctorate in engineering, and I appreciate you being here with us to share a little bit of your expertise, George.
Thank you very much. Good morning. My name is George Guscha. I'm the president and CEO of the National Institute of Building Sciences. 50 years ago, Congress created our organization as a nonprofit, non-governmental, nonpartisan, authoritative source for the nation on the built environment, a bridge between the public and private sectors, between federal, state, and local, and to advance our built environment in the public interest through building science and technology. I'm here this morning to thank Congressman Mullen and his staff for their leadership as they continue to champion community resilience and survivability from seismic events. Congressman Mullen, his leadership and dedication not only continue to further protect this community, but also the lives, livelihoods, and communities across the United States. This bill is significant because it fills the gap we have as a nation to recover quickly after a disaster. As we have seen tragically and have been reminded in North Carolina and Tennessee, lifeline infrastructure, water, electricity, roads and bridges, telecommunications, internet, etc., is critical after a severe event. 35 years ago today, first responders in the Marina District could not use the water distribution system to extinguish fires because it had failed under large soil movements. The region's telecommunications were challenged from both network congestion and the failure of electricity systems and grids. Thousands witnessed on television the devastating impact of bridge failures. Because of the extensive damage, the USGS referred to this as a lifelines earthquake following this tragic event. Through legislation such as the Earthquake Resilience Act, Congressman Mullen is laying groundwork to protect our communities from severe events and the aftermath of those events. I encourage Congressman Mullen's colleagues to sign onto this bill and show their communities that they also support rapid recovery after natural disasters. Thank you, Congressman. Through your leadership, commitment, and your ability to see what is important for the survivability and to protect the lives of the citizens of the U.S., we are going to be able to make strides through efforts like this to make our future in this country more resilient and safe for future generations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Guscia, and we're honored to have you here and grateful for your expertise and partnership as we move the bill forward. So now I want to bring up Bay Area Council CEO Jim Wunderman. Jim is one of the strongest advocates for our regional economy, and thank you to the whole Bay Area Council team for hosting us here on the Klamath Ferry, a beautiful location for this commemoration, and it's a stunning location. And Jim may want to talk a little bit about how, as a result of the earthquake, there was a real push around ferry service and opening up that opportunity to utilize the bay as a transportation corridor in the event of an emergency. But Jim, thank you so much for being here, for hosting us, and I'll turn it over to you now.
Thank you. Thank you, Congressman Mullen, for your leadership on the legislation, which we'll be firmly behind, and Mayor Breed and our public safety leaders in San Francisco. Welcome to the Klamath. I feel safe with you here, but as Mayor Breed pointed out, it can happen any time, any day. And 35 years ago, I was one of the lucky ones. I had 2 great tickets to the World Series game. And my wife and I were headed in. We weren't quite yet to the turnstiles. We went through to put in the tickets. We were surrounded by people, elbow to elbow, when it hit. And I thought we were on a moving walkway, but we know Candlestick Park didn't have anything like that. We realized we were in great danger. And I was looking at the walls above us, rocking back and forth. And I had worked for Mayor Feinstein, and I worked on the public works. And during the time she was mayor, the Public Works Director came to her and said that there were some serious structural problems with Candlestick Park, and they needed a multi-million-dollar fix immediately, and we didn't have multi-million dollars available, but she found it, and she made those fixes. And had she not done that, I don't know what would have happened. I felt, when I looked up at those walls, I felt like I was going to be an extra in some kind of a B-grade movie. When you've seen those, and instead it seemed okay when it was over, and people cheered. It was exciting, the A's and the Giants, and we're going to go in the World Series. So we went in, and it was still light out at 5 o'clock, 5:30, and so we went in, and you couldn't tell immediately what the damage was, but you knew the PA system was out, the scoreboard was dark, and as time went on, you didn't have cell phones to transfer information, go online and find out what was going on. So it was word of mouth going around Candlestick Park. And some people had these little TV sets. Remember, some of you remember those days? And you go to the ball game with one of those and passed around and you're trying to look in, and I looked over somebody's shoulder and saw the collapsed Cypress Freeway in Oakland. And then they said the Bay Bridge had fallen down. And so people in the stadium started to panic and try to get out of there. And you knew it was really bad when the wives started to pass the babies down to the players on the field. And the police had surrounded the field and people started to leave. And it was, when you got out to the parking lot, you could see a lot of damage to the cars and really get a sense. And we had a 4-week-old baby who we had babysat, left for the first time, and we had no way to contact the babysitter. The phones were all down, and so it was scary as hell. And fortunately, everybody was okay, and you know, everybody got to work after that to repair the city and the region from that earthquake. But it's just a reminder 35 years later of just how treacherous and how scary and how uncontrolled it is. So the work that you've done in the city and the focus that we're making here for the future to make sure that in fact we are as prepared as we can be as a region, as a city, a society, to prepare for what ultimately, unfortunately, will come. As Congressman Mullen pointed out, you know, we at the Bay Area Council created state legislation to create a water transportation system, and we have the letter E in it, so it's called the Water Emergency Transportation Authority. And on a day-to-day basis, we actually operate the ferry system, but every single operation that we have, part of it is training the personnel, the staff, to be prepared for a future disaster, which most likely would be an earthquake. It could come in some other form. But it's a really big part of the culture of your ferry agency, because if we have a major event, it's very, very likely, at least for a while, even though we've retrofitted the bridges, they'll be shut down. And BART will probably be shut down, that tube that runs across the bay. And the only way to move about, history would dictate, is going to be on the water, and not just for people getting back and forth to where they live, but also for emergency equipment and so forth. So we're going to be very, very dependent on our water transit system, unfortunately someday in a way we don't really look forward to. So I just appreciate the federal guidelines that you're putting forward, and I encourage all of us to you know, take care and be prepared. And as you're leaving today, if you go out on when you go out on the first floor, take a look at this incredible mural that we put up, which was taken a short time after the 1906 quake by someone who rigged up a kite and flew over San Francisco. And you can see the incredible damage. To me, it's the best visual of the post-1906 earthquake I've seen, and it's here on the Klamath. So thank you all for coming. Thank you, Congressman, again, for your leadership on this, and you know, we're firmly behind you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Now I want to bring up to the microphone Adrienne Bocelli, General Manager of the Bay Area Urban Areas Security Initiative. She's no stranger to handling emergencies, and I am pleased that she is here to provide some practical public safety tips as we commemorate this anniversary. Adrienne.
Thank you, Congressman Mullen. Once again, my name's Adrienne Bocelli. I am the General Manager for the Bay Area Urban Areas Security Initiative, which is an agency responsible for emergency preparedness and safety for 12 Bay Area counties. Based on a national assessment, the San Francisco Bay Area ranks fourth highest in risk in the nation, based on a combination of threat, of vulnerability, and of consequence of an incident. And so it's critical to the Bay Area's resilience that we prepare and we respond together as a region so that we are coordinated and efficient in all of our response and recovery efforts. That's why legislation like the Earthquake Resilience Act is so important. It will direct federal agencies to conduct a national risk assessment for earthquake resilience, so we can identify where and how we can improve earthquake safety at a local level. And having a better understanding of our gaps while we identify improvements will lead to better prevention and mitigation strategies. And assessments like this is what gives emergency managers and city planners and public safety officials the data that they require in order to invest in critical infrastructure and to create emergency operations plans. We know that lifelines are not just local, they are regional. We have transit tunnels that run underneath San Francisco Bay. We have a regional water system that spans across 4 counties and serves over 2.6 million people. We have an interconnected power grid that if there's a disruption in one area, it can completely impact another county. And we also know that our most critical resource, our people, are also regional. That's why statewide legislation like this is really so important. It focuses on cross-county impacts and lifeline systems, not just buildings for recovery after a major earthquake. But this type of investment does not just magically happen when there's legislation passed. It takes commitment at all levels, from the federal level all the way down to the community level, to make sure that we are able to handle anything that comes our way. While the emergency management community works together to support a prepared Bay Area, it is up to all of us to also ensure that we know what we can do now to prepare with our loved ones, with our neighbors, with our community networks for the next damaging earthquake. So today I'm here to remind you of some concrete things that you can do now to prepare for the next earthquake. Review your family's emergency plan. Make sure that you know where and how you will meet up with them after a big earthquake. Know how you're going to get in touch with your loved ones if local phone lines are down. Check on your emergency supplies. Make sure that you have enough food and water for every person and every pet for at least 3 days after an emergency. Know how to get information from your emergency managers. Go to alertthebay.org, and that will help you sign up for emergency alerts from your local jurisdiction. And also, today, in just a few minutes, join millions of Californians in the Great Shakeout Earthquake Drill, where you drop, cover, and hold on at 10:17 a.m. Now, on this 35th anniversary of the Loma Prieta earthquake in 1989, we remember those who lost their lives as well as those who were injured on that day. But we also remember the critical infrastructure that was damaged on that day, but that was also rebuilt, stronger and more resilient, as we've heard so many of our speakers mention today. And we know that it is because of those forward-looking policies from 35 years ago that we were actually able to rebuild more resilient today. We also see how technology has come so far. The U.S. Geological Survey, as mentioned, now we have access to technology from the U.S. Geological Survey that warns us that strong shaking is coming just by downloading a mobile app on our phones. This technology is groundbreaking, and this Earthquake Resilience Act will direct the USGS to invest in it even further, making our communities safer. Because we know that when it comes to an earthquake, every second counts. We also know that for every dollar that we spend investing in mitigation measures before an emergency, we would have had to spend $10 on operations for response efforts to that same emergency. That's why it's so important to prepare and invest now. Improved resource coordination for community preparedness is essential, and this legislation will help us receive federal commitment to that cause. And so again, I would like to thank Congressman Mullen for introducing such an important piece of legislation. And I want to voice the entire Bay Area's strong support for all programs like this that provide resources to communities who are most vulnerable to natural hazards like earthquakes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adrienne Bekele, and thank you to all of our speakers. As we conclude here today, for everyone watching, I'd like to close by sharing an effort that the U.S. Geological Survey is undertaking 35 years after Loma Prieta, scientists are still documenting reports of what it was like for those who experienced the 1989 earthquake. If you were here, you can report your experience or where you were and what it was like at www.usgs.gov/DYFLP. That's usgs.gov/DYFLP to share your story like some of our speakers did today. So with that, I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you, Mayor Breed, and our speakers. Thank you all for your leadership. And this is a reminder of all that still is yet to be done going forward. And I do hope this national risk assessment is a good first step to preparing not only the San Francisco Bay Area, but the country as a whole for what is to come with earthquakes. So thank you all very much.